Hello and welcome to The Lounge by Pivot Point, a sanctuary for personal and professional growth, offering conversations that inspire transformation and balance. Today with me, I have Kodey Bogart, and we know each other from the aviation industry. She serves as the Chief Executive Officer for KB Solutions and is a vastly experienced pilot, aviation safety professional, and aviation expert with over 20 years of experience, as well as an author of several books for young women. Kodey, it's a pleasure to have you on the show with me today.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. I'm stoked to be here with you.
Yeah, so we finally made it happen. We even had to do some updating because so much time has gone by from when you booked the podcast until when we went live. So I'm really glad that we were able to make this happen despite several technical challenges on my
Absolutely.
end. Yeah, well, you know what? And that really ties into why we're here today to talk about the entrepreneurial journey, because it really is the fast track to dealing with your own shit, because a lot of it's going to come at you. A lot of it is your own. And we just have to roll with the punches and pivot as necessary. So we make things happen despite those obstacles in our way.
And often become stronger because of those.
Absolutely. I think it's Ryan Holiday, whose book is in his book, The Obstacle is the Way.
Oh, that's cool. I have to read it. I haven't yet.
He's fantastic. So he's a daily stoic. I love his content. I actually subscribe to his Daily Stoic Life. So you get to do all the mini courses that he's got through the year. So there's a New Year, New Me challenge. I believe it's like 9 weeks or 6 weeks, something like that in the new year, where every day you get a little stoic lesson and a practice to put into your daily life. And it was really powerful for me last year.
Yeah, exciting. I'll definitely look it up.
Yeah, absolutely. So I loved that you decided to bring up the topic of entrepreneurship, because a lot of people think that entrepreneurship is something that they desire, but they're not really sure what it actually is like in real life. So tell me a little bit more about your entrepreneurial journey.
Yeah. So to me, when I think of being an entrepreneur, historically, I just thought it was like a title people would put on some sort of facet that they did. And I was like, I didn't really understand what that meant until I got into the ethos of exploring. And to me, that's what entrepreneurship is. It's exploring. We often have these intuitions, whether it's some sort of gut or things that seem to reoccur that remind us of something that we've been wanting to do. And it's trying to follow that nudge that we're given. To me, that's what entrepreneurship is. And it's being creative and thinking. I loathe the term outside the box, but it's thinking outside the box. It does fit sometimes, but it's just being creative with your thoughts. There's many ways to make it down a path, right? If I'm trying to get from point A to point B, there's an infinite number of ways to get to point B, and it's just choosing the path that works for you. Mm-hmm. And sometimes people always take the same route. And if I just try something a little bit different, maybe I can get more people on board that vessel with me on that journey together. So sometimes it's just, it's taking that leap and believing in yourself, and also like you're going to fall. So
yes,
being able to pick yourself up and say, holy man, that sucked. What did I not do that I should have? And what can I learn? So next time I'm on this little path, I don't make that same error. I don't know if that answers your question, but
yeah, no, I mean, that's a great start. And I love that you commented, you will fall. You absolutely will. I mean, I think of that Chumbawamba song, I get knocked down, but I get up again.
Absolutely.
Get you down, right? Like, and that's just what keeps happening, is you're going to get knocked over and you just have to get back up again. And it's the choice to keep doing that over and over. And ultimately, I mean, that happens everywhere in life, right? We're going to get knocked down, whether we work for someone else or we work for ourselves. But it can be more difficult because it can be lonely sometimes as an entrepreneur. We were talking a little bit about being a solopreneur before we went live.
Yeah, so it definitely is a lonely road. I'm exceptionally grateful. My husband is a huge supporter in what I do. He is an accountability partner to me, where I say things to him and he will say like, oh, I don't know about that one, or hey, let's discuss that further. Have you thought this and you thought that? And then I'm like, no, you're wrong. I got this.
Right.
Yeah, he's really great because he helps brainstorm with me sometimes when I feel blocked, or especially when, we had talked about when you're feeling alone as an entrepreneur. It is a lonely spot. You're only, I do my finances, I do my marketing, I do my HR, I do I do it every day. In addition to like, other projects and tasks I do, it's lonely. It can feel dark or isolated, or I feel great that I can just vent to someone who will smile and nod most of the time, and then, but also say like, hey, have you thought about this? Or, hey, maybe this isn't right for you right now. And that makes me think, it's nice to have that friend to go to.
Absolutely. And I love what you said. It's not right for you right now,
Mhm.
right? It's very similar to the language of, I don't know how to do that yet.
Yep.
Right? Just adding the right now or the yet really gives you that power of possibility back, because maybe it is for you, maybe it is on your path, but you still need to learn a few skills, or you still need to have some experiences before you can get to that stage, to that level. And
Hmm.
everyone is so obsessed in today's world about all the hacks, right? Like, how do I biohack? How do I hack my finances? How do I hack my health? How do I hack my sleep? What's the shortcut for me to
Yeah.
get from point A to point B?
How do I do it right now? Like, people are
Yes.
impatient. It's I've enjoyed the journey. I've enjoyed learning the friendships along the way. And I haven't, I hate to say this, but I've enjoyed the downturns too, because I'm able to,
Mm,
obviously hindsight's 2020, but to look
yeah.
back and reflect like, man, what was I thinking?
Oh,
Right?
yeah.
So next time I get to that segment in my path, I can say, hey, I remember when this happened and I need to pivot or adjust now before I maybe go down a path I can't return from, type thing.
Yes. And I mean, and being an entrepreneur, reflection is incredibly important because you're running a business. And so really looking back to see what worked well, what could be improved, is there something you need to stop doing? Is there something you need to add in? What
Hmm.
are those pivots that are required? It's important, because if we don't do that, we'll just end up repeating the same mistakes over and over.
Hmm.
And so having, people like your husband or peers in business mastermind groups, other authors, right? All
Hmm.
of that is really crucial to have a strong social support system. But I want to go back to something you mentioned earlier, and a core part of like what we want to talk about today, which is that self-belief. How does self-belief, why does it matter? And how does it impact not just being an entrepreneur, but how you show up in life?
Yeah. So I think my story might be a little bit different. You know what? I'm not different. I'm just like everybody else out there, right? I grew up with a stepfather who was abusive to my mother. He
Mm,
never assaulted myself or my brother, but I was always told by him that I would never be anything. And
mm,
though I had an extremely loving home with my mother, there was still this other piece where I just continually would tell myself, I'm not going to be anything. And that has really carried me through my life. But I probably in the past 4 years have really, so that person passed away when I was 18. So I mean, we're
mm,
over 20 years ago, that person was in my life. And then but they're still here in my head, right? So I still hear this
yeah.
person saying, you're never gonna be anything, or you can't do that, or you're not smart enough. You're nothing
Mm,
like, you're never gonna be anything, you're just like your mother, which my mother's amazing. She's super loving. But it's those thoughts of I can't, that honestly in the past 4 years, a little bit longer than that, I suppose, I want to fight him. I want to continually prove he's wrong, which
mm,
I think is a positive thing, but it's also painful. Like, why do I have to prove
right.
to this person that I'm something?
Yeah.
Right. So I've started to look back again, as I said, in the past 4 years to my life, but I don't regret any of the experiences I had in my childhood. I've only started to embrace them and be quite, grateful for them, because I really like who I am. I am not
Mm,
perfect, if there is a term of perfect, but it's for me. I have that voice like, you can't do it, and then it's me arguing back like, "F you, I sure can do it. Watch." you know,
yeah.
I'm a competitive person. I'm playful. So I think for me that works to continually step and to build forward. I love a challenge. I function very well in chaos. I
Mm,
think because of how I grew up, even when they were fighting, I would step in the middle and tell him to hit me and not her. He never did,
no.
thankfully, but I wouldn't trade those moments, right?
Yeah.
I'm strong because of all of that stuff. But I
Yeah.
I think it can apply to other people. Like, things are going to get tough. Like, this is life. It's not, handed to you on a silver platter. Even if it is, you can still jack it up. There's so many things that can go wrong. So that internal fortitude of like believing in yourself, right? I can do this. And if something falters, then say, okay, hey, like I said, we said earlier, like maybe not right now, or maybe this wasn't the path, but I learned from what was not working that, hey man, actually I'm better on this road, this path, right? Pivot, that pivots usually puts you where you should be.
Absolutely. And, because you're a pilot, I know you'll appreciate this analogy, but a friend of mine, Renee Bangelsdorf, she used the analogy of hand flying.
Mm-hmm.
And so I really like to relate that to our pivots, because when we make change in our life, so many people do it unconsciously, and they just go by default into patterns. And then, well, I'm going to graduate, or I'm going to get married. I'm going to take this new job. I'm going to move. And that's the only big change they plan for. They're not really checking in along the way and having these, metrics or sensations of like, hey, do I like this? And then 10 years goes by and you go, why am I here? Right.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're hand flying, you are constantly making micro adjustments, and you are constantly in tune with what is going on, because you have to be. And so if we take that analogy to our own lives and we just make those micro adjustments as we are pivoting, as we are deciding to try something new, we can then be way more present to the fact that this road is okay, but it's not for me. Or like, well, that was fun, but just for a short period of time. I don't want to keep doing that forever. It was a great experience, but now let's refocus energy over here. Because if we don't do that manual correction, then over time we get somewhere, and our self-belief can be really impacted, because it's something that we're doing to ourselves, right? We're kind of like living in one story, but the reality is something different. And where we have those disconnects, that's where our belief can really start to get in disarray.
Yeah, you're absolutely, everything you said was hitting on some of my ethos. For example, I have a lot of clients. I'm a safety consultant, and I speak to them about safety performance indicators and safety performance targets. And if you think about your target, like, this is my goal. I want to do X, Y, and Z by the end of the year. Well, you should have some indicators, right? Some metrics that you evaluate along the way. Like, is that goal, I don't know if you ever heard the term SMART, but specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. Right. And if they are, then that should be good. But if not, it doesn't mean that goal was bad, but maybe it just wasn't obtainable or relevant for what you're doing. So adapt.
Right.
And you had mentioned basically what you said was like the normalization of deviance. Sometimes if we get off the track, we just continue on that path that isn't our intended one, or maybe it's our new intended one sometimes. But I completely agree.
I was just listening to something yesterday with Corey Muscara. I'm in an 8-week course with him right now. It's all about opening the heart, and does a lot of internal family systems work. And the quote that he said was, it's not, it's the focus on what's wrong is what's wrong. Mm-hmm. Because we're focusing on the wrong thing. We're saying that this is wrong when actually that's the wrong thing to be looking at. We should be looking over there. But this is the distraction. This is the protector part. This is the thing that's just, making you go, oh yeah, this is the problem and I need to fix this, when actually underneath that, there's something else. And I just got that from what you were saying. It's really making sure that we're intentional with where we put our energy and focus.
Yeah. And strategy. Like I really like to, I do sit down with a pad and paper and say, what's like, for me, what's my end goal? And what are my metrics in between to achieve that goal? And sometimes, that evolves, or you have to change things on the way. But as long as you have a plan, like where you want to be, it's, then also it's important to enjoy that path, right?
Yes.
Enjoy where you are, be present in the moment, wherever your feet are, that's where you should be. And we have such a place in our world today where our minds are, on my cell phone over here with my kids at school, or my dog's outside the door. Right. Like my brain isn't right where my feet are, and it should be, right?
Yeah, there's a great book that I read earlier this year called Wherever You Go, There You Are.
Yes.
And it's a really poignant and powerful book, just bringing us back home to the basics, and reminding us to be here, because this is the only moment we're guaranteed, right? We're not guaranteed the next moment, yet so many of us are leaning into that edge and, the driving and the striving, which serves us in many ways, but it's also important. There's like this natural tension that has to occur with allowing that to be there to propel you forward, but also making sure that you're not doing it so much that you forget to enjoy like where you currently are.
Yeah, enjoy where you are. I completely agree.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit more about how you have cultivated more self-belief for yourself.
I just think it's more belief for myself would just be like through actions. Like when I do something that I have planned out and it worked, right? So actions, speak louder than words, but my actions reinforce like, hey, you know what? That was a good idea. And that did mean something. Okay, good. So it just like builds, it adds a layer. Like, okay, so let me think, what was the next piece of that puzzle? Oh man, that did work out. And it just reinforces as we go along that our actions mean something. And even if it doesn't mean something for somebody else, if you gain something from it in your own personal growth, then it's a positive. Like count that as a win. You don't have to change the world, but you have to make sure that you have a good place in that world,
Yeah. Well, and here's the thing, you actually can't change the world. You can only change it. You can only change yourself.
Sarah.
But by changing yourself and your world, that then ripple effects out, right? And other people then respond to you differently. And so that's how change occurs. But so many of us are focused on the external only that we forget about that internal. And that's why it feels like you're spinning 50 plates. And you have to do so many things. Like the more we simplify, the more we return home to those basic things, then the easier it becomes to actually give ourselves permission to experience joy or peace or happiness, and not feel like we have to constantly be running and generating and doing more, because when is enough, right? How do you define enough being an entrepreneur?
So I don't know if I have an answer for that. I don't know what enough is yet. I think for me, if it interferes with my day-to-day activities, if it interferes with my relationship with my spouse and my children, that's enough for me. Maybe that's it. Like if it causes me a heartfelt disruption, I've probably had enough. I don't often experience that because I'm strategic. I really sit down and plan a lot of things that I do. I don't just jump off that cliff on stuff. I really think about it, and I ask other people. I have my accountability partners or people in my war room, as I would say. So I bounce ideas and I try to really think. For example, this is a stupid example, okay? And I also don't let my kids use the word stupid, so that's great.
Well, you caught yourself. See, that's part of the levels of awareness, right? You caught it in the moment.
But I go to the store to go shopping for whatever, and I will put like 20 things in the cart, and I will leave only having purchased 2, because I think about it and I'm like, is this the right thing? Do I really need this? It's fun to enjoy the chaos for a second, but then you have to say like, okay, where's my limit? Like, do I really need this, or is this just another meaningless nothing that I don't need?
Yeah. Well, and that's a great thing about downsizing, because you end up not having space to put things that you just sometimes erroneously buy because it feels good in the moment. And it's just a kind of dopamine hit. And when you don't have the space for it, then you're a lot more intentional with what you are spending. And money's not the only currency. Like we can do this with our time. We do this with our attention, with our energy output, right? And so being very intentional about, is this really for me? Like maybe you're very fit and you're very active, but that day your body is calling for rest. So do you like stay rigid in the discipline of like, no, I need to go hard today? Or are you allowing yourself grace to have flexibility to honor what your body needs? Because that rest is also part of the training regimen, right? So how we can translate that into all other areas of our life is really crucial.
So have you ever seen the movie Fight Club?
Yeah.
I don't know why. It's one of my favorite movies. It's very obscure. But one of the most favorite lines in that whole movie is, he says, the things you own end up owning you. That I think about that a lot. Even work that might come up. There's a power into saying, no, this one's not for me, or I don't have the capacity right now. and plan it down the road. I don't need to work with that client today, but hey, can I get to you in 2 months? Will that fit to your schedule? Will that work for you? And if not, I know some good people I could refer you to. But having the ability to say no.
Yes, no is a complete sentence, right?
Mm-hmm.
We often feel like we have to justify or we have to give a backstory, and not wanting to do something is a good enough reason for not wanting to do it. Like
Mm-hmm.
there's no other thing that you have to do or say. And it's very powerful to understand that. And it can be hard, especially as an entrepreneur, because sometimes it's the like, well, I want to say no, but can I afford not to? Like, I need to say
Mm-hmm.
yes because, but at the same time, if you're saying yes to those opportunities that are constantly draining you, then you're leaving less of yourself on the table for the opportunities that light you up, that give you more energy, that lead to the work that you should be doing, because that's in alignment for you versus, trying to swim upstream the entire time. And, you can do it,
Mm-hmm.
but you're going to be exhausted at the end.
Yeah, and if you're giving everybody 10% of your time, are you giving them any of your quality time?
Exactly. Right. Yeah. There's a language hack that I learned when I was, growing up the ranks in the corporate world where, I always wanted to say yes to projects because I liked doing projects. My 70% was most people's 100%. So, I could take on more, and I almost got like, a high from it. But then there was a point where I was like, if I take another project on, this is all going to suffer because I can only split myself so many ways. And so, I was offered this big project, and I said, I'm really honored that you think I'm the only person that can lead this project. And I absolutely would love to. In order for me to do so and deliver the quality that you have come to expect from me and that I want to deliver, can you tell me what of these other 4 priorities I have at the moment can go to the bottom of the pile?
Mm-hmm.
And then he was like, oh, okay. Yeah, actually, let's take this one away from you because you definitely need to do this one. And other times it was, oh, no, I'll give this to somebody else because you need to be on those. And it just, because sometimes your manager doesn't know how much, they're not paying attention necessarily. They're just like, oh, you're the go-to person. I'm going to come to you and give it to you, which is wonderful, but you can't do it all. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so by doing it that way, you show that you are interested, you're willing, and maybe you're not interested. So you can say, you know what, I'm honored, but I think so-and-so could do it better. Right. Again, referring. So
my
always
focus is
being
better here.
yeah, adding value by giving a referral and making sure people stay in their lanes.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you stay in your lane, you get to go a lot faster than if you're trying to run the race of everything.
And hopefully you enjoy that lane you're in too. If it's a project that you're not super pumped about it, you're not going to give it your all. And that's one thing I think is great about being an entrepreneur is everything I'm doing is in my wheelhouse. It is my passion. It drives me. It's not having a boss who says you have to do this, to be here or to retain your job. It's making your own decisions, and your own efforts, which is empowering.
Yeah. Tim Denning is an Australian writer I follow. He's an online writer. And he talks about being obsessed, right? When you're an entrepreneur, you find the thing that you're obsessed with that you can't get enough of, and you go and do that, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's a reason why I like to do space events. There's a reason why athletics is involved in a lot of the things that I do and talk about, right? Because I'm obsessed with those things. And so it's going to make its way. And then that makes it more fun for you. It's energy giving. So what I've learned as an entrepreneur is to look where I have resistance and then analyze it. Is this resistance because I'm afraid of like looking bad, not knowing what I'm doing, afraid of the failure? Am I afraid of the success? Because I've not done that before. What am I going to do if all of a sudden I now have 10x of all of these things? Because 10x the income also means 10x the customer complaints, 10x the X, XYZ, 10x the accounting, all of the things. Am I just resisting because I really don't want to do it, but a coach told me I should do it or something along those lines, right? And it gives you an opportunity to really uncover. So if you can become curious with it, I found now when the resistance comes up, I can quickly put it in like one of these 3 major buckets.
Right.
And then from there, make a decision of like, okay, this just means I need a little bit more training to feel confident to move forward. Or how am I going to be on the backside of this? Is this something that I really want? How will my life change? Should this progress in that fashion? Or you know what? I don't really want to do this. I'm just
Mhm.
saying that I do because it sounds cool, or because,
Because
someone told
they
me that
want
I
to
should.
please you.
Right.
It's a
Um, but for yourself, do you have certain indicators that help you to determine whether or not you're on the right path?
if I don't sleep well as it is. I've always been someone who goes to bed and it takes me an hour and a half to 2 hours to fall asleep. My indicators are if I'm spending too much time thinking about it,
Mm,
as opposed like I'm really good at quick decisions. If I'm spending days thinking about something, usually that means I'm not interested. I don't want to say not interested, but it's weighing too heavily on me,
yeah.
or oh, at the same time, I also realize I think about things a lot anyway that stress me out that I'm looking forward to. So I have to balance: is it a stressful thing, or am I speaking too often about it with friends, or with my husband? Am I vocalizing? Usually, like if I get vocal about something,
Mm,
that's usually an indicator I'm uncomfortable. Because
right.
usually I'm pretty easy. I'm glow with the flow. Things happen, right? It's life. But when I'm starting, when I start to vocalize, like, oh, are we sure about this? Or man, I don't know about that. If
Yeah.
I'm doing that, I'm already apprehensive. And it's usually a good indicator that this is not the right moment for that to happen or ever.
Yeah, yeah, because sometimes when we're vocal, it's like we're trying to convince ourselves out loud,
Yep,
right?
absolutely.
And it's really easy to see it when it's happening for other people. It's a little harder when it's ourself and our own thing. I remember a coach that I had. She used to say, "Don't should all over yourself," because a lot of times that languaging, right? It's very powerful languaging. We have these shoulds in our minds from our parents, from our the ghosts of our past, from people around us, society. What are they going to think at the office if X, Y, Z? Um, if
I
that's
think
if that's really going to be something of concern for people, then maybe whatever you shouldn't be there. Like someone once
yeah.
asked me, "Aren't you afraid like you might not get work because you have tattoos on your hands?" And I was like,
No.
"Listen, if someone's not going to hire me because I have tattoos on my hands, they're not going to listen to me anyway. So like, why would I even want to work there? Like
And the
at
people that
all?"
will listen to you will not even notice you have tattoos on your hands because I have seen you in person. I don't know how many times, and I didn't even know.
Yeah, right? And so that's the thing is because then the other people are like, "Wait, you have tattoos on your hands?" And I'm like,
Yeah.
"Yeah."
Another
So,
thing too is I've learned like when you go to meetings and stuff, like never say I'm sorry. Like, oh, I'm sorry I'm late or I'm sorry about this. Obviously
mm-mm.
there's a time for apologies, but
Yeah,
they might not even notice that you were late or that you're sweating or you know, all these
right.
things that until you say I'm sorry or oh I didn't mean for that. They probably didn't even know it was occurring. So you draw more
Ex
attention into
Exactly, and you know what?
what
Expressing gratitude is a much more powerful position to be in, so
Mhm.
thank you for your patience,
Yep, yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Instead of sorry it's like, "Oh, I'm so sorry this was a week late." Just say, "Thank you so much for your patience in receiving the proposal."
Yep, absolutely.
That's it,
Everybody's at
and
ease.
yeah, it's just because it shows that you are aware, but you're still, like, you're focused, you're back on track, right?
And
Instead of, like,
everybody
excuse,
can be
excuse,
late.
excuse.
And everybody can have challenges. That's you're not the only person, right? So them
Mm.
being flexible is a positive.
Yes. You know what's really interesting? So there's the different forms of procrastination. There's different styles. There's the chronic overbooker, which is definitely something that I used to do. I was very optimistic with my time, especially if it was like in-person meetings and I wouldn't account for the time to get somewhere, or I'd like, oh, just one more message, one more email, one more thing. But what I realized under that was this was actually a strategy. It's a tactic for feeling like you're in control because then other people have to wait for you, and
Mm.
so now you're special, and like there's all of these layers to it. And as soon as I started to recognize like where it was actually coming from, now I'm early. I'm leisurely getting somewhere very peacefully, not getting stressed when other people are
Yes.
getting stressed about things. And let me tell you, I wish I would have done this like 15 years ago because it is a much nicer place to be.
Yeah, it is. I would agree.
Yeah. So tell me more about the Hello Girls or Helo Girls, I should say, excuse me, and the series of books that you've been writing. What was it that sparked you to write these books? And I know you had several last time we spoke that were about to go into print. So where are you at in the series, and what else is there for us to look forward to?
Yeah. So as I mentioned earlier, I'm not one to fall asleep very early. So I would lay in bed and I would tell myself these stories. I'm like, oh, if I'm doing this type of mission, like what would I do? How would it look like? What would I expect? How would things go? What would I brief about? What would I deep? And I would just tell myself these stories. And then I have a child now, she's 13, but when she was really young, I tried to find her helicopter books. And I had a really big challenge trying to find books. I found one, I think it was from like the 1960s. It's a very cute book. It's about a dog who heard a noise. And then like all of these things through this book. And the very last page was, it's a helicopter. Right. So it wasn't all of these other things, a train, a dragonfly, or whatever he thought he heard. It was a helicopter. And so I bought it off the like some eBay or something. It was very cute, but I could not find a lot of other good books. So my son, who now just turned 7, so when he was a baby, I was able to find more books, but a lot of them weren't accurate to the mission, right? For example, one had a pilot fly out and then the pilot was hoisted down to rescue an animal. I'm like, well, who's flying the aircraft? You know, I mean, autopilot's good. Yeah. I just don't know if it's that good, right? Someone has to monitor it. So I wanted more accuracy. And then my heart has definitely shifted a lot more into the safety realm. I really enjoy that aspect. So I wanted something safety forward. It's funny with my own children, I watch them do things and then recalibrate themselves to make it safer. And it just brings joy to my heart. For example, they had this electric scooter, my daughter, and she put my son on it. And so she's on this electric scooter and he stands behind her and he wraps his hands around the front of the handlebar as much as he could, but he's basically just grabbing her backside, right? And they go down the road. And I'm like, he's not hanging on very well. So I watch them, they get down to the end of the road and they swap. And she puts him on the front where he can have more control holding the handlebars and he's like at a more stable stance. And she comes back, she's like, we just had to change it. It just was not the safest way in which he was riding. And I was like, yes, go mom. So I wanted books that were safety forward as well. And then I'm a pilot, right? So I don't go out and tell people I'm a female pilot. I'm just a pilot. Right. So I just wanted to put a pilot in the book. So it just does happen that it happens to be a girl. So I decided to call it Helo Girls. And that honestly, it came at a super whim because I just really liked it. It had a good ring to it for me. So that's like my lack of sleep and inability to find books that I thought were super adequate, relevant, safety forward, and representative for my children is what drove it. And again, I spoke with my spouse about it and we talked for a while about it. And he's in finances. So I definitely talked, market growth potential and return on investment. And what does that stuff look like? Because it is important. So that's how that journey really started, was just wanting to do that. And I will add, I go to a lot of industry events like yourself, and some places let children in, some places don't. And I get so frustrated, like we're lacking pilots, we're lacking maintainers, but we're not talking to them until they're 18 years old or already in a 2-year degree program in college. And I'm not saying don't do that. I'm just saying they might already have a plan. Yeah, you could probably shift it or guide them a little bit more in a direction. But my 7-year-old son knows he wants to be a fixed wing pilot. He is all in at 7. So that seed has been planted. So let's plant that seed earlier for kids all over. Like, have you ever thought about helicopters? There's so many different types of missions. It's not just one thing. You can do all sorts of things. Absolutely. So to plant that seed super early was important for me.
I love that. And you saw an issue and you took steps to resolve that rather than waiting for somebody else to do it. Right. And so that's what entrepreneurs do. We come up with creative solutions. We see something that like, well, hey, this made a difference in my life. This can make a difference for other people, or like there's a gap here. So how do I close that gap? And then in doing so, then that can grow and spread obviously from there. But I agree with what you said. Planting that seed is so critical because what we're exposed to really shapes our worldview, really shapes how we think, what we think is possible. And by planting the seeds at a young age for both boys and girls about flying, about being a maintenance professional, about all of these different opportunities, if you don't go, like I still have friends 25 years later who are like, yeah, you work for like the airlines, right? And I was like, no,
No.
I have never worked for an airline ever. And they're like, but like you do stuff with planes. Do you sell them? And I'm like, no, not that either. But it's just so far out of most people's comprehension that when you say the words business aviation or aerospace or even speaker, they're just like, well, what does that mean? You know? And so getting that exposure, I remember going into the cockpit when I was little, you know, this was before 9/11, and we used to be able to go up there and get our wings and like talk to the pilots. And I think in some cases now, if it's like the pilot's child, they can still do this on certain airlines, depending on the policy. But, you know, going to air shows, that was so instrumental for me and going to the planetarium and like doing, you know, I was a kid. I didn't really understand everything they were talking about in these workshops, but I'd get to see the big like night sky show and be in awe of that. And it planted those seeds that then later became possibilities of like, well, what can I do in those fields? Obviously there's adults there and they do something. So like, what is the thing that maybe I can do?
Yeah. And I like the idea. There's in aviation and aerospace, right? There are so many things, as you already said, that you can do. I mean, do you like to sew as a child? Because aircraft need to have interior upholstery or interior design,
Yeah.
drawings, marketing, food service prep. There are so many avenues, not just in aviation, but in aviation. Like there's a place for you here if you have an interest. It's not just about being a pilot or a maintainer, which are very important roles,
Absolutely.
but it takes the whole team. It takes this whole conglomerate to help a pilot do their mission successfully, you know?
I really like your languaging around having a mission and making sure that your books are having a mission focus, because if we can treat the things that we're doing in our life as missions, I like to use the analogy as a science experiment, but for other people, mission might actually land better, particularly if they're former military members.
Mhm.
But by having a mission, it's very clear. You have a directive, there's an end date, there's an objective. And so you know what actions to take, or you can figure that out in
Mhm.
order to go in that direction. If we don't have a mission, if we're lacking that clarity or focus, that's when we're kind of like aimlessly bumbling about or throwing spaghetti at the wall, especially in business.
Mhm.
And so many people have this mindset too. I mean, we ask an 18-year-old to pick a degree and be like, this is what you're gonna do forever. It's like, no, actually, that's not what you do forever. I went in Brittle and maybe like 10% of my graduating class actually works in aviation to this day, or
Good.
is a pilot if they studied aeronautical science. So, I mean, especially with the rate of change of technology, we're going to be doing so many different things in our lifetimes.
Mhm.
So understanding that this is a mission, and you get to then complete this mission and then choose another one,
Yeah,
right?
move on
It
to the
doesn't
next.
have to be this like long, never ending mission. It's not the never ending story. Falcor is not here, unfortunately.
My dog Henry's a Cocker Spaniel. His name's Henry, but I call him Falcor. He looks just like him.
Oh my God, I love it. And for those of you who don't know Falcor, you're probably too young, and
You
that's
need to watch
okay,
the
but
Never Ending Story.
go
It's so,
watch the never ending story. It's a classic.
or Stranger Things, which incorporates that
Stranger
song, right?
Things is so great. I think they have season 5 coming out soon,
Oh,
right?
yes. I think it's like early spring, if I'm not mistaken. My
Oh, I'm
kids
so
are all about
excited.
it. So,
So good. When I first cut my hair, I looked like 11 from Stranger Things.
hey, that's all good.
Yeah, it was great. It was really good. Um, yeah, so you know, I love that the books are mission focused, you know, and instilling that belief, because you know, if we look at children, if we look at how they build self-confidence and self-belief, it's in those smaller tasks that they accomplish and then they
Mhm.
feel pride from, and they get excited about, and then they venture off a little bit more. And so it really is akin to having stretch goals, right? We've got our smart goals, but what are those things that are going to stretch us, but not too much? There's like a sweet spot
You're right.
of, I forget the exact percentage, and the person who like made a model for this, but there is very specific tipping point of this amount of stretch is where people can really thrive and
Mhm.
grow from. But if you do too little, they're bored. And if you do too much, it's overwhelming and too hard and they'll shut down.
Yep.
And
I
I
was
think
actually
it's like
talking
a
about that
20
earlier.
to 30%. Yeah.
Yeah. It's we need a little bit of stress in our life to be for success, for comfort.
Yeah.
Again, to your point, we don't want to be too lackadaisical. Um, so yeah, I completely agree with all that. And I think part of the book, yes, The mission piece is super important for me. And something I didn't realize when I started the book was, to me, I just put a pilot on the book. Yes, it's a girl, but I don't go out and say I'm a girl pilot. I'm just a pilot, right? And so months ago now, it's probably 10 months now, my little dude came up to me in the kitchen and he's like, Mom, and he knows he wants to be fixed wing. He's like, Mom, could I be a helicopter pilot? Because he's only ever seen me, girl.
Yeah.
He's only ever seen the books, girls. So I looked at him and I said, cute. No, buddy, you can't. I did not do that to him, but he didn't see himself as a boy being a helicopter pilot because he's only ever seen fixed wing boy pilots, and he's only ever seen rotorcraft girl pilots through me. So it really, I know representation matters, but I never really saw or experienced that. I was just like, I'm going to go do it. Like, I don't care what someone else says. Whereas my little guy, he didn't see himself. So he's like, I don't know if I can do this, Mom. Can I be a helicopter pilot too? And so I thought it was really for me, a light bulb moment. And so that's why, excuse me, each book in the series features a different helicopter mission and a different female pilot. So it doesn't follow one. Each girl has her own backstory. I don't share those yet. They will be in my strategic plan.
Yes. What is the release date? How many books do you have now? And then what's coming?
My bookshelf back here. Sorry. So here's book 1. This came out early this year. The firefighting pilot with Abby. Her name's Abigail. She goes by Abby. And then book 2. This is my test book. It will be published February 25th. So it's up for pre-order right now, and then I will start turning in the manuscript for book 3 in January. So hopefully that'll be out before Christmas 2025. And this one's law enforcement with Selma. And then book 3 is air ambulance with Zuri, which is Selma. So I worked through a nonprofit called the Space Coast Women in Aviation Alliance. And our whole point is to go out and to educate children about the diversity in aviation, not gender diversity, but employment. Just as we were talking about earlier, there's so many things to do in aviation. But at one of our events, I was looking for a name for my next law enforcement book. And names are hard because names in different cultures can mean a lot. So if I use a name that didn't resonate with upper class, and they wouldn't appreciate the book, if the name was too lower class or whatever, it's just a whole thing I never thought I would think about. But there was a woman there from a local aviation company, and her name was Selma. And her hair, she had just beautiful short hair, and her skin was glowing, and she had this blue eyeliner, and she was so nice. And I was like, "What is your name?" She told me. I was like, "What's your nationality?" Let's see. So the book is named after her, but it's reminiscent of how I felt about when I met her. Super nice, glowing woman. She's from Brazil. And then, the name Selma itself means peaceful and safety. So for a law enforcement pilot, it was like destiny.
Yeah, I love that. I love the layers because there's a lot of nuance that we often miss. And that context is so important for understanding because language matters. What we call ourselves matter. There's a lot of people who introduce themselves and then they're like, "Oh, but if it's too hard for you, you can just call me D or something like that." And I'm like, "No, what is your name? Please say that again for me." And, I'm very particular about just doing my best. Maybe I can't roll my R's or maybe I can't, get it exactly right the first time, but I'm going to call them by what they desire being called by, what their name is, not just a nickname because it's easy for me. Right.
Yep.
And I think that's
a pilot at a flight school, Sarah, and we had a lot of Asian students and they were like, "My name's Dechong, but you can call me Mike." And I was like, "No, I'm not calling you Mike or Sam or because you think I can't say your name. I'm going to get it wrong, but correct me until I get it right because I love my name, and I want to respect yours." And typically in a lot of cultures, people's names mean something in their lineage that's valuable. So I don't want to call you Mike when your name is completely something else,
Yes, absolutely. It's powerful. The words that we speak are really, they shape our reality, right? And going back to that word should, I always like, I'm a word nerd. So the etymology of the word should, it's like 14th century Scotland, somewhere in that time frame. And its origin means to owe. So if I said you should do something, it's because you owe me that.
Oh,
And that's where that language comes from, which is why we inherently don't like this word.
I did not know that. So I look at a lot of safety manuals, right, when I audit with clients and all that. And there are words like should that I don't care for because either I do or I don't. Whereas if you want me to just say, yes, do, I'll say I should, because then that gives me free reign to not.
Correct. Right. And it's like a kid with boundaries. We are better when it is clear
Absolutely.
where that line is, because when it's you should do this, it's like, well, but that means I don't have to.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And everyone will interpret that differently. and
Absolutely.
even when you say that this is the thing, there will be people who just do their own thing anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Ask me how I know.
How do you know, Sarah?
Yeah, I'm just, I make up my own rules.
I feel like you were a good growth experience for your parents.
Yes. Oh, you know what? I look back now and I'm like, wow,
I'm sorry.
my mother is a saint. Like, okay, maybe this is why I'm afraid of having children. I keep unplugging my light back here.
We're all afraid of the unknown, Sarah.
I know exactly.
When you have kids, it is the unknown. It's the abyss. Another great movie that I love. But you're in the abyss.
Opened up.
Don't know.
Yeah, I've recently opened up to that possibility. So, one day I have a fur child. I have a fur daughter, my Doberman. She is my baby. But it's interesting, even just having, because, she's a big dog. So she is another being. She is almost like me, another me in the house. And when my mom came over, when I first had her, she was 4 months old. My mom was watching me like discipline her and do something. And she's like, this is hilarious. You literally have a dog that is just like you. She's like, she's strong-willed. She's super smart. She's very sweet. And you got to put her in her place sometimes. And I was like, oh, yep.
That sounds like me. Haircut as well?
Oh, yes. And, in the spring, she's got a very shiny coat, and like her muscles, and she's in the sun, and somebody walked up and they're like, that's a beautiful dog. And I was like, yeah, you know what? I've got the spring fluff going on. I got to go back to the gym. Look at those muscles. Like I need to do my dog the honor of like being next to her. But it is funny because people and their dogs do exhibit similar like characteristics and traits and even physical traits. And it is quite entertaining to like start to analyze that.
Yeah, to see that. Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. I want to ask you a little bit. I'm actually going to be co-producing a conference next year. It's called the Total Force Plus Conference by the Military Officers Association of America, MOA. Cool. And it's bringing all the branches of the military together. It's the first time an event like this is happening. So actually, I would love to talk to you about this offline. But my point is, one of the big tracks of conversation is how we support our military service members transitioning from the military to civilian life, because that is quite a big pivot, and understanding how they can apply the skill sets that they had as a service member into different civilian jobs. And, what does that look like? Because obviously very different ways of interviewing, different systems, different structures. So talk to me a little bit about what that journey was like for you and what you found most valuable.
So it was like interesting. So when you think about the military, I was active duty for the Florida National Guard. So I wasn't regular Army. I was active duty Guard. So I worked every day. I wasn't someone who was 1 week in a month, 2 weeks a year. I did it every day for 12 years. When I was in aviation in the military, they don't teach you a lot of stuff on the civilian side. For example, the FARs, the Federal Aviation Regulations. I've seen that book when I was in the military, but we never looked at it because we had our own Army regulation, right? Which would usually be more restrictive than the FARs. So I think the Army would do a really good job. And yes, I'm definitely speaking from an aviation perspective, but I'm sure if they don't do it there, they probably don't do it anywhere else. But show people how their professions can relate to the civilian side. And I will tell you, I understand why they don't. They don't want you to leave the military. They want to retain you. But then, treat people good, educate them, show them their value there. Because in 20 years, 30 years, when they retire, they still have enough opportunity to go into the civilian sector. When I got out, it was pretty much a see you later. I had no transition. None. I did from when I left combat on a medical perspective, a lot of medical questioning and stuff like that. But outside of that, I didn't have anything. It was like one day I was in and like the next day I wasn't. And
Right.
it was weird for me. I joined at 17. So literally that is all I
Wow.
knew.
Yeah, very jarring.
Yeah. So, I remember I was looking for a job. I was going to try to fly in the Gulf off to the offshore oil and gas company rigs. And I spoke to this gentleman on the phone who was nice enough to take my phone call. But he's like, oh, you don't understand power management because you flew an aircraft that had, twin turbine engines. And I was like, apparently you've never flown in the desert or had engine issues in the desert because it's pretty much a controlled descent from that point. But
Yeah.
it was brazen to me because I was like, wait, I was trained on the best aircraft in the best market, and then here I'm told I can't understand power management. Well, I'm already flying. Why don't you if you think I can't, then ask me some questions. Let's talk about it. Let's do a flight.
Right.
Put me in a situation where I have to overcome that and let me show you, as opposed to just like, nope, you don't get it.
Yeah.
So, just so happened I had a friend who worked at a flight training school in their legal department. And he's like, hey, they're looking for instructors, but you need to have your CFI and your II. So I went to the school. I earned my CFI, my II, and I taught at the school for a year. And I was really happy I did. I was actually flying a small Schweitzer, which, if you know, I mean, the size of this cup holder piece is the size of a Schweitzer. So I would hover that thing at like 20 or 30 feet. And they're like, no, what are you doing? We should hover, 3 to 5 feet. And I was like, oh, I am hovering because that's my sight picture from the Blackhawk,
Right.
So once I got that down and under control, it was fine. But I taught there for a couple of years. And I think for me, learning on a smaller airframe gave me more appreciation, but it didn't mean I didn't understand power management from the get-go. Right. So again, taking that person who said you can't, or you're not able because you don't understand this, I was like, well, F you. I definitely do understand this. And I'm going to pivot and I'm going to go over here and do this instead. And obviously that wasn't the right company or the right person I wanted to work with who didn't believe in people or see the best in them. So my transition, I think, was stark. Like I said, one day I was in, one day I wasn't in.
Yeah.
And
so for someone who might be going through that right now, what advice would you give to them?
So first of all, you're not alone. I think we often feel when we're in moments of uncertainty or unclarity to ourselves, we feel like we're the only person that's ever gone through this. And usually you're not, right? Somebody else has. So I wouldn't say like reach out to the VA. I love things like the Vertical Aviation Association. They have a great military to civilian program. That's a great way to reach out. Just being on LinkedIn, I have found that there are many groups out there, many people advocating, especially for mental health, to reach out. And I would say, don't be afraid to say something. Like, I'm not saying you're on the edge of your cliff, or maybe you are, but even just say, hey, I need help with this, and be vulnerable and receiving of that help, and I think that would be something I would mention to people. Like, you're not alone. There is places out there. Again, I think the Vertical Aviation International is really a good organization to get in. I know a lot of people there, so I like all of them. They've all been through it too, to help people through that military to civilian transition.
Beautiful. I love that. And I'm just going to pop the link up here for the Total Force Plus conference. I'll also share that with you later, Kodey. It's my favorite thing about it is the tagline is the first and only military conference where people outrank everything.
Yeah, that's
so there's
awesome.
going to be, it's all, the focus is on the people. It doesn't matter what branch you're in or what rank you are. The focus is on how we develop people and how we train them, and not just for retaining, but also to help transfer to be good citizens, good members of society, right? Because ultimately you get reservists. You also get people that maybe re-enlist. There's a lot of different avenues there, but I think this is a great mentality, not just for the military, but for any organization, right? When people are the focus, that's when you have that really strong culture, the cohesive elements, people willing to go above and beyond to support because they're a group, they're like, yeah, we're going to do this together, not I'm going to fight you for this resource and I have to win at the expense of all else. And so it's really shifting the narrative to be more about community and supporting each other rather than this very like kind of individualistic silo that we've experienced a lot the last several decades.
Right. Well, that sounds exciting. I look forward to hearing more of that. It sounds like a good event. Where is it being held at, out of curiosity?
It's going to be in the National Capital Region. It's October 28th or 29th, 2025.
Okay.
So if you go to this link that's up on the screen right now, or I took it down, but if you go to the link, you can join the wait list. So the tickets aren't yet released, but you have some basic information there so that you can hear from Lieutenant General Brian Kelly from the U.S. Air Force. He's retired. He's the president and CEO of MOA. And this is a conference that's focusing on solutions. So even the exhibitors and the sponsors, I'm working with Sempre Events to help co-produce it. If they're not in alignment with providing solutions, then they're not going to be at the conference, right? So it's really a forward, future-thinking event and creating an environment where there's different experiential elements. So I'm really looking forward to it as well because it's definitely nothing that I've ever seen before in any conference environment. So I'm having a lot of fun being a part of the team putting it together.
Sounds exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I wanted to ask you a few questions that I always love to ask all of my guests. And the first one is, what is your superpower?
The first word that comes to my mind when I heard you ask that was love. Like when I look at people, or situations, I always go in with love. I'm not one to judge at first. I'm kind of like, everybody has my trust from the beginning. You choose to take away from that. I think that's my superpower. I also have a knack. I moved around probably once a year my entire life. I said a lot right now. Yeah. Sorry about that. And I just apologized.
You're good though. You're catching yourself in the moment, and that's a good practice.
Yeah, I fit well into a lot of situations. Like I am hardly ever uncomfortable. Even when I should be uncomfortable, I feel like I get strength in that.
Yeah.
So I tend to lead with love and openness to learn more about what's happening around me.
I love that. And yes, the chameleon, right? You can blend into different environments is a very powerful skill set, and being agile, right? Mm-hmm. That allows you to like, well, okay, this doesn't fit anymore. I'm going to go over here, or, like that was good. I'm curious what's over there. Let's try that. And seeing how you can adapt to those different environments, going at what you mentioned at the very beginning, taking a different route home, right? Just going a different way, going left instead of right, taking the train instead of the bus, all of those different things give you new perspectives, and they give you that ability to do that until it becomes second nature.
I think about like when I was in SEER school, adapt and overcome. Like, so, yeah, you have to change things sometimes to get where you want to go.
Absolutely. What one of my friends, Rave Mehta, he's a renowned pianist, and he said, what if you just lived your life as if when you walk into a room, you imagine everybody in there loves you? How would you show up?
Isn't that how it is?
Yes. Well, it should be. No, I'm going to use should in that case.
I would show up in some sweatpants and a t-shirt. Just kidding. I don't know. I don't know how I'd answer that, because I feel like I do that now. Again, as I said, I walk into a room and everybody gets who I am. And if that's not for you, then we slowly take away from that, right? You have all my trust and love until you decide that that's not where we should be.
But that's a powerful place. So to your superpower, this is not something that most people do. Most people come in with like, how do I protect myself? How do I guard? How do I have a separateness because they're going to judge me? They're going to this. If we walked into that room believing that everybody loved us and supported us, we would be different. We would show up differently, right? Yeah, and so that's a superpower we can learn from.
I do know, like my personal self and my professional self are slightly different. My personal self is I am all in. Let's do this, game. My professional self is I can be more guarded. Because of my strategy, I feel like someone's going to start doing what I want to do or take my strategy from me. So I get guarded with thoughts, but I'm still open and receptive I still love everybody, but I get more reserved. But if you get social, Kodey, she's a whole other girl.
I've seen social, Kodey. Absolutely. Okay. Now, when we go through our life, there's a lot of times we come up against a big decision where we feel like we might need to consult with people just to get different perspectives. So just like in a business, this is our personal board of directors. But the way I like to ask this question of who's on your personal board is this. They don't have to be people that you actually know. They can be people that you filter your thoughts through the lens of. So for example, it could be someone famous like Oprah, or a famous author, Simon Sinek, something like that. It could even be an avatar or a TV character, somebody fictional or someone from the past. So who would you say is on your personal board of directors?
Yeah, so I use the same kind of thought process. I just say in my war room, I think that's my military ethos. My husband is definitely there because he is someone who will flat out say something. I don't know how to verbalize it, like so matter of fact to make me think. He thinks a little different than I do. And he comes with a background that's different than mine. So I really value what he says. And interestingly enough, my 13-year-old daughter, I would put in my war room because she's my accountable. She holds me accountable for everything. Drives me nuts. But she would be that person. I have a really good friend named Jen. She definitely thinks different than I do. She would be good. I also think Jerry Seinfeld would be in there because I think if you're laughing while you're doing what you're doing, it's gonna be good. I don't care what it is, but if I could be in one of those cars with Jerry Seinfeld drinking a coffee and just listen to him and be funny and talk, that would be good.
I love that. Yes, I agree. More laughter in life is great. If you can't laugh at yourself, why so serious? I had a yoga teacher who would say that, would be in this like hard pose and he'd be like, why so serious? And he's like, poke you or something, try to make you giggle. And he's like, it's okay to laugh in yoga. It's okay to laugh in life. And even we can have fun too.
Yeah, laugh. Yes. Like don't laugh. I realize there's serious moments for things, but if you could take the lighter side of things and make it enjoyable. When I was full-time flight instructing, I had students who were sometimes miserable with other flight instructors, and I would just let's make this fun. Let's laugh today. I don't care how it turns out. If this is a pass fail or not successful. Let's just enjoy what we're going to go do, because chances are, if you're enjoying that journey, if you're enjoying what you're doing, it's going to be successful. Whether it's successful that day or in the long term, it's enjoy what you're doing. So Jerry Seinfeld, definitely in my war room.
Jerry, if you're watching this, then you're gonna have to give Kodey a call. Yeah. Okay, final question, which is starting to become a little more relevant considering how much activity we're starting to see in the news and pilot reports to ATC. Let's say an intelligent life form comes to Earth and they meet you, Kodey, as the first human being, and they interact with you. So what are they going to learn about humanity because they've met you?
I instantly went to a joke and I was like, please take me away from these people. I want to go with you.
I'd be like, please, I'm not like the rest of them.
I knew I didn't belong here.
We're like hitchhiking. Like, the answer's 42. I know the answer.
Excuse me, I got tears. I think what they could learn from me is, I say this a lot to, especially one of my cousins when we were talking about some things. I believe, and I learned this again in SEER school, but embrace the suck. Mm-hmm. Because sometimes life sucks, and it's hard. There are things that are going on, but as I again look at my childhood, embrace that because it's who we are. I think what they could find for me is someone who just loves everything that's around us and can learn from it, whether it's good or bad, and I would like that they would learn that same thing and say, oh man, this is a good place. And there are good people, even on their bad days, making their bad decisions. They're still a good person in there, Yeah,
absolutely. Amazing. Well, if they're listening to this broadcast, they'll get to hear.
Maybe I'm studying.
Yeah, exactly. My sister just sent me. I keep Maybe the aliens are actually pulling this out of the wall. Maybe it's not me.
You're speaking to us in Morse code with the light.
Exactly. Like, we're going to go back and watch it and be like, oh my God, there was a message. My sister just sent me a link this morning of some pilots in Denver reporting, talking to ATC, reporting some moving lights that were at 50,000 feet and moving erratically. So she's like, oh my gosh, there's more. I was like, yeah, they're always there. Today's Friday the 13th. So this could be the day. You don't know. This could be the day.
This is our 2000, right? Or 00.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, Kodey, this has been so much fun. I can't wait to see your other books get released. Please keep us up to date on that. If people would like to find out more about you or Helo Girls, where they can reach out and where should they go?
Yeah, absolutely. Just helogirls.com. So HELO girls.com.
Perfect.
You can learn all about everything.
Learn about all the things. Okay, amazing. Well, what is the next event that you're going to be at?
So I'm actually taking a trip to Kenya, but that's more like personal, exploratory,
beautiful.
going to share some love, some orphanages in Kenya. And
Awesome.
then we have Verticon in Dallas in March, and then followed at the end of the month with WAI, which I hope I get to see you there, right?
Yes, I believe it's in Denver, right?
Yep.
That's currently the plan.
Yeah. So I was going to say Heli Expo, but Verticon now, and then WAI in Denver, March.
Okay, and the Verticon is in January, correct? End of January?
Also in March.
Oh, also in March. Okay.
Yeah, March 10th or 11th it starts, and that's in Dallas.
Okay. Well, that's not too far away. Maybe I can pop over.
Yeah, not too far at all. It's coming up on quickly.
I know. I feel like I always joke. My joke is that like once it's July, you blink and then it's Christmas. And it feels like that's what's happened. It's like
I would completely agree. I don't know where 2024 went.
Yeah, and every year, just the rate at which we do things is so rapid, which is why it's so important to remember to slow down, just take a deep breath and smile.
Remember where your feet are.
Exactly. Be where your feet are. Yep. Exactly. Be here now, like Ram Dass would say.
Yep.
Amazing. All right, Kodey. Well, I appreciate you being on the show with me. Thank you so much for your time and for you sharing your energy. And I look forward to seeing you soon.
Yeah. Thank you, Sarah. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays. And for everyone who's watching this live, thank you so much for joining us. If you're watching the replay, go ahead and tag us with your questions. We'll get back to you. Next week, I'm going to have Rhett, who is one in my Space Kind group. She's also part of the Viking Mars mission and done a lot in the aerospace industry. She's going to be my guest next Friday. So we'll see everybody soon. Have a wonderful weekend.